The tall stranger stood motionless on the trail, his dusty black boots firmly planted in the earth, shoulders tense. He angled slightly, concealing his holstered Colt as he peered downward, his eyes shielded by the brim of a black Stetson. His attire was entirely black, woolen shirt, gun belt, denim pants, and leather vest, melding into the sun-baked landscape, resembling a wavering shadow. The sound of approaching riders made his horse uneasy, its head bobbing as it watched the newcomers, a roan and a paint, approaching cautiously. "Easy, Dakota, steady," the stranger murmured, still focused on the ground, as the riders halted. "Excuse me, sir, you're blocking the road. Mind moving aside?" The rider on the paint spoke, hand resting near his sixth gun. "What do you think, Blair?" "Recognize him?" asked the rider on the roan. "Yeah, Dex. I've seen him," Blair replied calmly, loosening the strap on his navy coat. "Who is he? Who's this Sanborn?" Dex's voice betrayed his apprehension. "This here's Chase Sanborn," Blair began, hand hovering near his pistol grip. "Dios mio," Dex whispered. "God has no part in this," the man in black retorted, tilting his hat to reveal piercing pale blue eyes, devoid of mercy. "What's your business, Sanborn?" Blair asked, eyes fixed on the stranger's gun hand. "Why are you confronting us?" "Know a man named Jim Bartlett?" Sanborn inquired bluntly. Blair closed his eyes briefly. "Yeah, I know him. Dex and I worked for him once, before he accused us unfairly of cattle theft." "He's dead." "How?" "You killed him," Sanborn accused. Dex gasped, and Blair shot a glare at the stranger. "No, I didn't. When Bartlett fired us, I was relieved. The man was bitter and cruel, worse than a rattlesnake in heat. Working for him was nothing but trouble, but I never took a life. Dex and I were done with the single bar T." Sanborn reached inside his vest with his left hand, while his right hovered over his pistol. When he withdrew his hand, he dropped a small object onto the ground between the horses. Blair recognized it instantly, cursing softly. He heard Dex's sharp intake of breath. "Blair, that looks like—" "Shut up, you fool," Blair snapped. As Blair raised his gaze, his hand instinctively drew his hefty navy Colt, snarling, "Take him." Dex watched in horror as Blair whirled in his saddle, a burst of crimson mist erupting from his chest as Sanborn's Colt .45 thundered. "Blair!" Dex screamed, reaching for his own gun. But Dex never cleared leather. 2.45 slugs sent him flying off his horse, landing heavily in a cloud of dust beside Blair's lifeless body. Chase Sanborn stood motionless amidst the chaos he had caused. Holstering his Colt, he approached the fallen men. Bending down, he retrieved a small object from the ground, a piece of leather adorned with multicolored beads. He glanced at it briefly before tossing it next to Blair's hat. Standing tall, he surveyed the scene. The horses had fled after the shots, leaving both bodies sprawled across the trail, Blair's gun still clutched in his hand. Dakota snorted, pawing at the ground with his hoof. Sanborn turned towards the skittish horse, calmly making his way to the unsettled stallion. Without looking back at the fallen men, he grasped the saddle horn with his left hand, swung his left foot into the stirrup, and smoothly mounted the sturdy black saddle. He showed no concern for the corpses left behind. This trail had witnessed much. With a sharp click and a gentle twist of the reins, horse and rider galloped away. "Will you get your nose out of that damn book and help around this house?" she screeched. "At least take out the goddamn trash. Sometimes, I think you love books more than your wife." Jack sighed, setting the book aside. "Damn, woman, you're in rare form for a Saturday afternoon. Usually, I can get a couple of chapters in before you start yelling." Pushing himself up from the chair, he looked at the Western novel he had been engrossed in for the past 2 days. "Good read," he thought. "Might be a while before I get back to you." Entering the kitchen, Jack heard M, short for Emma, banging around in the living room, rearranging furniture and tidying up. The sound of her usual cleaning music, some kind of new-age electronic stuff, drifted through the house. Keeps her sane, he thought, though the soft tones often put him to sleep. Wonder what she'd be like if she went crazy, he mused. He winced at the crash and the shatter of glass. Sure enough, M's high-pitched shriek followed. Oh my God. No. Jack knew he had to check it out, not wanting to give her more reasons to feel neglected. What's wrong, honey? Oh, Jack, my crystal flamingo fell off the end table and broke. It's shattered. M cried, holding up the largest remaining piece. Inside, Jack smiled a bit. He'd always disliked that garish thing, but he knew it meant a lot to M. David Preston, her boss, had given it to her at the last company banquet. Thinking of Preston, Jack frowned. He knew the man was always after M, showering her with gifts like that damned crystal flamingo. Jack attempted to console his upset wife with as much sincerity as he could muster. I'm really sorry, babe. I know how much you liked it. Wasn't it the expensive crystal Preston gave you? From Santorini, Greece? M nodded quietly, holding the broken pieces in a dish towel. Sniffling, she replied, yes, it was. But it's not about the cost, it's about the sentiment. Preston remembered how much I love flamingos. He's always been thoughtful like that. Jack regretted speaking out, but his frustration got the better of him. Thoughtful, he questioned, his tone sharper than intended. Emma turned to him, her expression hardened. He's good at something you seem to struggle with. He knows what I like, she retorted bitterly. Jack couldn't hold back. Sure, he knows what you like, Emma. He's dying to get into those panties of yours. The word spilled out before he could stop himself, and he immediately sensed the gravity of his mistake. Emma's eyes narrowed, her face flushed with rage, blending with her fiery red hair. You bastard! You jealous asshole! You've never liked David, never given him a chance. You always assume the worst and think he's after me. Well, I'll tell you something, Mr. Asshole Jackson Lee, it'll be a long time before you ever get back into these pretty little panties. A long fucking time. In fact, sleep in the guest room tonight. Jack felt a long-held anger rise within him, and instead of calming the situation, he found himself laughing bitterly. He knew it would only further enrage Emma. Damn, Em. I can't even remember the last time I got near those panties you think so highly of. Hell, we haven't been intimate in months. Maybe someone else has been getting your affection? Wouldn't be surprised, since you sure haven't been giving it to your loving husband, he spat out. Emma stared at him, blinking, her anger giving way to hurt. Tears welled up in her eyes, the green irises he loved so much glistening. Without a word, she ran from the room and down the hall. Jack winced as he heard the bedroom door slam shut, wondering if she had locked him out. Damn it, why couldn't I just keep my big mouth shut? Jack reflected aloud. You know why, you idiot. This has been going on for way too long, he gruffly answered himself. Eventually, he calmed down enough to confront a troubling realization. She hadn't denied his accusation of cheating. Suddenly, his heart sank as he contemplated what her silence might signify. Son of a bitch. He whispered, envisioning the bleak and uncertain future ahead. Jack sat down, pondering his next move. His wife was in their bedroom, undoubtedly distraught, while he wrestled with his thoughts. Then it dawned on him, she hadn't actually confirmed she'd been unfaithful either. Standing up, he walked down the hallway. The bedroom door was open, indicating she might have fled to the guest room. However, both doors were ajar, and he noticed Amelia's, their eldest daughter's, bedroom door closed. He approached quietly, listening to the faint sound of Emma sobbing inside. Gently tapping on the door, he spoke softly, Em, can we talk? Emma sniffled, hesitating before responding, please leave me alone. I'll be okay, just give me a few minutes. As angry as he felt, Jack's heart ached hearing his wife in such despair. All right then. If and when you're ready to talk, just call me, he said quietly, receiving no response before turning away, leaving her to cry alone. Damn, he muttered under his breath. Around 6 in the evening, Emma sought out her husband. She found him sitting by the workbench in the garage, staring out into the neighborhood through the open garage door. She stood in the doorway from the house, observing him quietly. He wore the expression she knew so well, lost in thought, his emotions unreadable. She feared what he might be thinking. "Jack," she called out softly, almost a whisper. Jack turned to look at his wife, a profound sadness washing over him like a wave crashing on a shore. Despite their troubles, he loved her deeply and cherished their years together. "Yes, Em? Can we talk now?" A faint, crooked grin spread across Jack's face as he nodded. "Sure, why not?" Emma couldn't help but smile at the man she had married 21 years ago. He was still handsome, albeit with a few more lines around his eyes and a touch of gray at his temples. Jack's deep brown eyes, always lively and loving, reflected his enduring affection for her. She knew where his heart lay, even if he didn't always show it as clearly as she wished. Thoughts of David Preston briefly crossed her mind, igniting a pang of guilt. Jack noticed a shift in her expression, a familiar guilt that he had seen before. Why would she feel guilty? He wondered silently. He stood up slowly and approached her. Emma could sense a change in his demeanor, feeling a twinge of nervousness. Perhaps this wasn't the right moment for their conversation. "Well, let's get this over with," Jack said resignedly, bracing himself for the worst. "Okay," Emma replied timidly, unsure of what to expect next. Together, they walked out into the backyard where Emma sat on a sofa-length covered swing. Jack looked at her and asked, "Want some coffee?" Nodding with a smile, she replied, "That sounds nice." He went inside and prepared the coffee maker, keeping an eye on Emma as she gently swayed back and forth on the swing. Memories of happier times flooded Jack's mind, recalling the first moment he laid eyes on her at Salmon Bay in Seattle, Washington. Jackson Nathan Lee had just finished securing the bow line of the Sea Mist, a 75-foot research trawler, when he spotted her walking down the dock towards the vessel. He was captivated as she approached. Tall and slender, around 5'9" or 10, she moved with grace along the undulating dock, her deep red hair streaked with gold cascading over her shoulders and curls. She wore a pale green woolen cap and a dark navy blue peacoat that accentuated her trim figure and long legs and pale blue denim jeans tucked into black suede boots. As she passed by, Jack couldn't help but notice her stunning emerald green eyes, framed by delicate eyebrows and a few wisps of reddish curls. Her porcelain face, with soft rosy cheeks and a sculpted nose, held his gaze. Her lips were full and inviting above a flawless chin, all set atop a graceful neck that disappeared into a thick turtleneck collar. Mesmerized, Jack stood there gaping until Captain Barrick's voice snapped him out of his reverie. "Jackson Lee." "Jack." Startled, Jack turned to see Captain Barrick and his crew looking at him from the gangway, some grinning while others laughed. "Get moving and secure the stern line," bellowed Captain Barrick, cutting through the laughter. "Aye, sir." Jack responded, hurrying to secure the line to the mooring bollard at the stern. Once the line was secure, Jack glanced around to find the mysterious woman, but she had disappeared behind the railing of a large yacht on the opposite side of the dock, gleaming white and impressive. Shaking his head, Jack knew she must come from wealth, far beyond his humble means. "Ah, come on, Jack, she's way out of your league, buddy." "Let's go grab some drinks at Flanagan's," teased one of the crewmates, breaking Jack out of his thoughts. Jack turned to see his closest friend, Michael Chi, grinning broadly, his bright white teeth flashing. Michael, an undergraduate majoring in oceanography like Jack, was interning aboard the Sea Mist just as Jack was interning in marine biology and engineering. "Sounds good to me, you grinning gargoyle. As soon as the Sea Mist is." "Don't worry, Barrick gave us the go-ahead. The rest of the crew will finish up," Chi interrupted with a laugh. "Why would he?" "Ah, because of that baby gray we helped. We were the only ones willing to jump in and cut away that damn net. Anyway, we're free now, so let's not argue, let's go." Jack smiled and replied, "Give me a minute, I need to grab my gear." "Hurry up, man, I'm parched," Chi complained, his eyes pleading. 15 minutes later, they burst through the front entrance of Flanagan's Sports Bar and Grill. "Hey, Jackie, you old sea wolf." "She-man, where you guys been?" shouted a massive bartender from behind the bar. "Jimbo, how's business, man? Just got off the Sea Mist and we need to wash the taste of salt out of our mouths. Give us a couple of Coronas, poor favor," Jack requested. That's poor favor, you nimrod, Jimbo corrected with a laugh, slamming 2 Coronas on the counter. First 2 are on the house for you 2 clowns. After that, you pay double for every skirt you chase away. She looked hurt and with a mock pout said, What are you accusing us of, Jimmy? We bring the fairer sex in by the droves, don't we, Jackie? Hell yeah we do, Chi. They can't resist this old fire trap once we're in town, Jack chimed in. James Flanagan shook his head and chuckled. The only thing you 2 sorry excuses for marine biologists can attract is a good case of the crabs. Laughing loudly, the giant bald bartender wiped his hands on a less-than-clean dish towel and moved down the bar to serve a sudden rush of customers. That's marine biologist and engineer, Jimbo. Jack shouted after him, but all he got in response was more laughter. Come on, Chi, let's grab a table. I've got $10 says I can take you down this time. Chi laughed. You know, Jackie, you'll never beat me, but at least you never give up. Custer and the 7th Cavalry would have been proud. Grab a cue, I'll rack. It was during the 5th game, $40 poorer, that Jack lined up the cue ball on the side cushion to bank the 8 into the side pocket. Easy shot, he thought. Gonna finally get you, you red-skinned devil, he muttered, pulling back on the stick. Just as he slid the cue tip forward, someone bumped his elbow, causing the cue ball to glance off the edge of the 8 ball and roll slowly across the faded green, worn felt of the table. No! Jack screamed as the glossy white ball teetered on the edge of the corner pocket, hanging there for a moment before finally dropping in. She erupted, Yeah, do it for the spirit of our Indian culture. As if obeying the whims of the spirited Native American, the ball unceremoniously plummeted into the pocket. Scratch. You lose again, pale face. Hey-ya, hey-ya, hey-ya ho-ha, chanted Chi, breaking into a ceremonial dance. Goddamn, motherfucking, son of a bitch. Who the hell bumped my elbow? Jack angrily scanned the room, searching for the culprit, and froze. Staring back at him were a pair of concerned green eyes, clearly upset about their owner bumping into the handsome young man now standing there, red-faced and holding a cue stick. Oh my God, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to hit your elbow. Did I ruin your game? Please forgive me, she apologized earnestly. Jack felt like a deer caught in headlights. He stood there, tongue-tied, staring at those beautiful eyes, unable to utter a word. Jackie boy, pull your tongue back in, stud, chuckled Chi, smacking Jack on the back of the head. As if awakening from a dream, Jack began stammering, no, you didn't do anything. It's fine, really, no problem. Chi laughed uproariously before composing himself and approaching the young woman. Please forgive my awestruck companion here. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Michael Chi, and this poor sap is Jackson Nathan Lee, known to friends as Jack. Some say he's a descendant of the famous Southern General Robert E. Lee, but you wouldn't know that by listening to him. Of course, you've already thrown him off his game earlier today. Puzzled, she looked from Chi to Jack and back again, her eyes widening in recognition. Yes, on the dock earlier this afternoon. Jack, finally regaining his composure, playfully punched his friend on the arm and said, No worries. Sorry about him. He calls himself Red Cloud's Revenge, but he's not even Sioux. He's Salish. I probably would have lost to this idiot Indian anyway. You just sped up the inevitable. Emma smiled warmly and replied, Oh, okay. I was afraid I might have messed up your, billiards game? Just pool, actually. We were playing 8-ball. And I apologize for the language. I didn't realize you were behind me, Jack said, enjoying the soft, musical lilt of her voice. He suspected there might be a touch of Irish in there somewhere. That's all right. I've heard worse, believe me. I have 3 older brothers. My name's Emma O'Brien. She extended her hand, and Jack shook it, finding it warm and soft yet firm. For a moment, he didn't want to let go, but reluctantly released her hand. Very nice to meet you, Emma O'Brien. Are you from around here? No, she replied. I'm here with some girlfriends, visiting Seattle for the weekend. It's kind of a getaway from school. She, unable to contain his curiosity, interrupted eagerly, Emma, where are your girlfriends? Are they here? His grin widened, eyes twinkling with the promise of future adventures. She, for God's sake. Jack whined. What? Can a guy ask? Said she. It's okay, really, said Emma, pointing to a high pub table just on the other side of the bar. She waved at two young and very pretty women who waved back at her with smiles. Please excuse me, she said, but duty calls. I'm afraid your friends look rather lonely and need some local guidance. The excited Native American disappeared, leaving Jack and Emma laughing. What school? Jack asked. Excuse me, she replied. What school are you from? Oh. UC Berkeley. He frowned and grumbled, OHNO, a liberal among sheep. She couldn't help but laugh. Maybe, but I don't see any sheep. More likely wolves, but definitely no sheep. Jack snarled in his best John Wayne inflection, you may be right, Pilgrim, but around here it's Huskies. Washington Huskies. Again she laughed and nodded. I must acquiesce, Washington Huskies it is. That was quite a ship you boarded today. Your father's? The sudden change of topic caused Emma to stare at him before she smiled, understanding what he meant. Laughing, she said, oh God no, that was my roommate's parents' boat. They were throwing a graduation party for her. Still chuckling, she continued, my folks could probably only afford the cab it took me to get there from the airport. Jack grinned, and Emma was taken by his lopsided smile, framed by several days' growth of beard. She felt a stirring of emotions for this shy and clumsy yet somehow dashing young man as his dark brown eyes gazed at her. She found herself attracted to the tall, lanky pool player with his scruffy dark brown hair falling across his eyes. She noticed a deep scar running from his right temple to just below his cheek. Jack noticed where she was looking and said, knife. Deep in the bowels of L.A. trying to protect the virtues of a fair maiden against the ravages of 12 sex-starved gangsters. Emma glared at him, as if he had lobsters crawling out of his ears. Would you believe 5 ex-boyfriends trying to get their things back? No? Okay then, how about 1 angry sister's throwing a coffee cup at her brother for spying on her and her boyfriend necking in the kitchen? Emma tried to suppress a giggle but couldn't help laughing. Jack just looked at her, trying unsuccessfully to look cool and sincere, that crooked grin popping out. Suddenly, Chi appeared, rolling his eyes and shaking his head. Now do you understand what I go through? Chi said. What the hell are you doing here, you crash and burn? Jack questioned. A very attractive blonde-haired young woman emerged from behind Chi and giggled, no bloody likely, I'd say, in a cheerful, low, seductive voice. Emma laughed and introduced her, Jack, this is Diana, another of my roommates and, as you've probably guessed, not from around here either. Jack smiled and shook Diana's hand as she said, hello Jack, pleased to meet you, mate. From Sydney. Beg your pardon? Sorry mate, from down under. Australia. You know, shrimp on the barbie, koalas, roos and all that. Sydney, Australia. Roos? Kangaroos, you dunce, snickered Chi. Even I figured that one out. Jack and Emma laughed as Chi and Diana told them they were heading out to Pioneer Square. The two joined them and spent the evening sampling all that Seattle had to offer, the public market, Pioneer Square, the Seattle Underground, and the center, home of the famous Space Needle. Jack and Emma were inseparable for the next 3 days, until she and her friends had to return to Berkeley. On the evening before her departure, they sat together on a worn sofa on the upper deck of his houseboat, watching the sunset. Emma nestled against Jack's chest, his arm draped around her shoulders. Jack, she whispered. He looked down into her emerald eyes. Yes? Thank you, this has been so wonderful, she sighed, feeling as though she knew everything about him after the past 3 days. Smiling warmly, he replied, you're welcome. He held her a bit tighter, inhaling the scent of jasmine in her red hair. A pang of icy dread shot through his heart at the thought of her leaving. He didn't want her to go. Jack, she softly asked again. I. She struggled to find the words. Coming to her rescue, Jack said, would you mind if I came to visit you sometimes? I've enjoyed your company so much and would like to keep seeing you. If you'd like that, of course. I'd like that, she murmured. I would like that very. Before she could finish, he pulled her close and kissed her. In that moment, Jack realized how much she meant to him, how deeply he loved her. Emma moaned as their tongues danced together. God, how I love this man, she thought, thrilled and scared at the intensity of her feelings. It's only been 3 days, her mind screamed, but as she breathed in assent, she whispered, I don't care. Jack almost asked what she meant, but let his lips continue their passionate exchange instead. A year later, after a whirlwind courtship and Emma's graduation, they married and moved to a small town just north of Monterey, California. Over the next 3 years, Emma gave birth to Amelia, followed by Jackie a year later. Sitting beside Emma in the swing, Jack thought of their girls. Both were away at school now, Amelia following her mother's footsteps at Berkeley and Jackie attending Washington State University. Since the girls left home, tensions had risen in their household. Jack buried himself in work while Emma became increasingly involved with Preston & Sons, a prestigious law firm specializing in civil law and big business. Emma worked as a personal assistant to Douglas Emmett Preston's son, David Preston. Tall, blonde with dark gray eyes, David exuded confidence and had the instincts of a successful civil attorney. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Emma was his latest target, even though Emma didn't see it. He knew she could be naive at times, shaped by her liberal upbringing. Over the past year, friction had grown between them as work consumed their lives, and Jack watched his wife grow more distant each day. Jack poured coffee into 2 cups and brought them outside, handing one to Emma. Thanks, she whispered, taking the hot cup. Anytime, he replied, watching her gaze shift to the colorful bougainvillea along the back wall. Jack settled on a stool next to the swing and waited, sipping his coffee as he gazed at the sky, where a lone jet left a long white vapor trail against the vast blue expanse. Jack. Yeah, he replied quietly. I'm sorry. Jack took a deep breath and stared down into his coffee, watching a thin wisp of steam rise from the dark brown liquid. For what? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma closed her eyes briefly, then took a sip from her cup before answering. For making you think I cheated. I didn't. Well, not physically, I suppose. Not physically? Jack raised his eyebrows, searching her face. She turned to meet his gaze, locking eyes with him. I never slept with him. But I've been with him. Jack stayed silent, observing the myriad of emotions flicker across her features. Emma had never been good at hiding her feelings. He invited me to dinner several times. I accepted the last 2 times. You were away in Anchorage for those 3 weeks, remember? Jack nodded slowly. It had been 3 months since he returned from Alaska, where he had been sent to investigate potential environmental issues caused by oil seepage. He recalled how their relationship had felt strained since then. He called her every day during his trip and had noticed a change in her tone after the first week, something that made him uneasy. I remember, he said evenly. You sounded different on the phone, like something was bothering you. Yes, Emma sighed, her voice tinged with guilt. I felt guilty after the first dinner. I knew I shouldn't have gone, but I did. But you didn't feel guilty after the second dinner? Jack's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his turmoil. Did you enjoy it? Was he everything you hoped for? Better than your husband? Jack, please, Emma pleaded softly. Yes, I enjoyed the evening. He was a perfect gentleman. We just talked. Talked? Jack's jaw tightened slightly. About what? Everything, Emma admitted, her eyes dropping to her coffee cup. The law firm, my future at Preston & Sons, about us. We talked about the girls. And what about us? Jack pressed gently. He wanted to know how things were between us, Emma replied, her voice barely audible. David mentioned the firm might promote me to executive manager and wanted to understand if our family life was stable. And? Jack's tone was edged with tension. Emma looked away, her gaze drifting to the sky. I told him we had some issues to work through. I told him. Told him what? Jack's voice was strained. I told David that I sometimes feel like your career is more important to you than our family, than me. Let me guess, Jack interrupted bitterly. He suggested I might be having an affair. Emma hesitated briefly, then nodded. Yes, he did. But Jack, please believe me, I never doubted you. I knew you would never cheat on me. He didn't say anything more. Anything else? Jack's voice was tight with restrained anger. Emma's eyes closed briefly, steeling herself before she continued. He asked me to accompany him on a business trip to Vancouver. You know what he wants, Emma, Jack stated flatly. Jack, you always assume the worst, Emma shot back, her face flushing with frustration. He needs me to go with him, to assist in important negotiations. It's part of my new role as executive manager. Jack's expression softened slightly as he took in her words, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. Okay, Emma, you've told me. You've been out to dinner with this man twice, and now he wants you to go with him for how long? Jack's voice was low and controlled, but there was an edge to it. Emma glanced down, her voice soft. 3 days. So, what do you want from me, my blessing? Jack's words were tinged with bitterness. I don't need your blessing, Jack, but I wanted you to understand this is strictly business. I know I was wrong not to tell you about having dinner with him. That's why I'm telling you now. Jack stared at Emma, feeling a surge of anger and hurt. She seemed so defiant, so sure of herself. Well, it was time to bring her back down to earth. Fine, you do that, Emma. Do whatever you want. Apparently, my opinion doesn't mean anything to you anymore. That's not true, Emma began, but Jack cut her off. Let me finish. And yes, it is true. For the past 6 months, we've hardly been the loving couple we used to be. I don't know why. Yes, I've been busy with this project in Alaska, but you've always understood. Suddenly, things have changed, and not for the better. I find out you've been on 2 dates while I was gone. Oh, you're sorry for not telling me, but clearly not sorry for going out with that guy. Fine. Here's the deal. You go on your 3-day business trip with him. Maybe I'll have dinner with a friend myself. Maybe I'll take another business trip back to Alaska. Marie would love to get some field experience. Marie? Emma repeated, her voice betraying a hint of surprise. Yeah, Marie, Jack replied, his tone cutting. You remember Marie. She's the new environmental engineer we hired. You met her at the picnic. Long blonde hair, blue eyes. Remember? Emma remembered Marie, and a pang of jealousy flared within her. She remembered how Marie had admired Jack, talked about learning from him. You can't be serious. You're just trying to make me jealous. Why would I do that? Clearly, I shouldn't be jealous of that guy, right? Jack's words were sharp, filled with accusation. No, of course not, Emma said quickly, too quickly. Damn him, she thought. All she wanted was some space for herself, to enjoy a man's attention, without any intention of crossing any lines. Yet here was Jack, doing exactly what she had imagined. And she felt the seeds of jealousy taking root. Fine, you do what you think is best, Jack, Emma said tersely. I'll be leaving this Friday and back by Monday. Wow, that's short notice, Jack remarked coolly. Do me a favor before you leave on this business trip. What? Emma asked, bracing herself. Make sure you're up to date on your birth control. I don't want any surprises. And tell him to use protection. You don't want to bring any diseases home. Emma seethed, finishing her coffee in silence before standing abruptly. I better start packing, she sneered as she headed inside. Jack watched her go, his heart heavy with anger and hurt. Without warning, he growled and hurled his coffee cup against the wall, the porcelain shattering into pieces. Damn that woman, he muttered under his breath. Thursday evening in the Lee household felt arctic, despite the warm California weather. The atmosphere between Jack and Emma was icy, each wrapped in their own silent turmoil. Early Friday morning, Emma woke up to find herself alone. It was unusual. She was usually the first one up, starting the coffee. But this time, Jack wasn't there. Glancing at his side of the bed, she noticed his covers neatly pulled up, his pillow missing. A cold dread crept over her as she realized Jack hadn't slept in their bed. "Damn it, Jack, where are you?" she muttered, throwing back the covers and getting out of bed. Searching the house, she found Jack's pillow in the guest room, the bed showing signs of recent use, but Jack was nowhere to be seen. Hurrying into the kitchen, she discovered the coffee maker empty. "Shit, not even coffee," she muttered angrily. "Jack? Jack?" No response. Concern growing, she returned to the bedroom and spotted a half sheet of paper leaning against their wedding photo on her dresser. Snatching it up, she saw it was Jack's handwriting. "Emma, sorry, I won't be able to see you off. Hope you enjoy your time with David Preston. I'm sure he will take good care of you. More than you probably feel I would. Well, I guess you need that kind of attention. By the way, who other than David Preston has spoken to you about this new position? Oh, and speaking of David, I have to confess, I almost confronted that piece of shit about inviting a very married woman, my married woman, to dinner without the knowledge of her husband, but decided he's not the problem. You are. It was your decision to accept both invites. It was your choice not to tell me. And now you've resolved to go away with him for 3 days. All he did was dangle the carrot. You're the one who took the bait. I'll be away for the week, so I won't be home when you get back from your little interlude. I'll be in Valdez. A last-minute request by the company, sorry for the short notice. If there's an emergency, call my cell. By the way, when I get back, we need to sit down and discuss who gets what. And what to tell the girls. Have fun with Preston. Jackson Nathan Lee. Damn that asshole. Emma screamed, crumpling the paper and tossing it against the wall. I bet he's with that Marie, she spat. Well, screw him. Two can play at that. She stopped abruptly. Discuss who gets what? Tell the girls? What the hell? It hit her then, the finality of Jack's words. Tears welled up as she sank onto the bed, staring at the crumpled note. Jack was telling her it was over if she went with Preston. And the mention of Marie with Jack stirred a new, fierce resolve in her. The plane taxied to the terminal at VA Aviation, slowly coming to a stop. Jack and Marie gathered their carry-on luggage and exited the 12-passenger turboprop. Within half an hour, they stood in the lobby of the Best Western Valdez Harbor Inn. Marie stepped aside as Jack checked in at the desk. He handed her a key and took hold of their luggage. Together, they entered the elevator, heading to their room. As Marie stepped off on her floor, Jack watched her pull her travel case behind her. Tomorrow, they'd be testing the waters of Port Valdez through the Valdez Narrows into Prince William Sound, a long, full day ahead. Later, seated by the window in the hotel room, Jack stared out at Valdez Port. It was truly beautiful here, he thought, but his mind kept drifting back to Emma. Why, he muttered aloud. Why would she do this? Almost in response to his own question, he reflected, when was the last time I took her out to dinner? How long since we went dancing? Hell, when did I last hold her in my arms? He frowned, dissatisfied with his own answers. Marie, grab the bucket, make sure it's secured before you start collecting samples. Marie-Lucien nodded, biting her lip, and hoisted the heavy bucket off the rocking deck, carefully trailing the nylon rope behind her. Ready? She nodded, and Jack instructed, okay, go ahead. She tossed the clear plastic bucket overboard, hearing the splash as it hit the churning sea surface. The bucket immediately disappeared below, and she gripped the line tightly. Wait. Okay, start bringing it up. Struggling, she managed to haul the bucket back to the surface, but once out of the water, she had trouble pulling the heavy container up along the hull. Here, let me help, Jack said, wrapping his arms around the petite woman and lending his strength to pull on the line. With his assistance, they successfully brought the sample up onto the deck. Good job, Marie. And remember, never hesitate to ask for help, okay? Nodding gratefully, she murmured, "Okay, Jack. I won't." Several hours later, they returned to port after collecting numerous water samples from various locations in Prince William Sound, the Narrows, and finally, Port Valdez. "How are you holding up?" Jack asked, watching Marie rub her arms through her thick coat. "I'm okay, just a little cold, I guess." "Just a little cold?" Jack chuckled. "Woman, I'm freezing over here. I can only imagine how you must be feeling." Marie smiled, her face mostly concealed beneath the fur-lined hood of her coat. She sat on a bench inside the pilot house while Jack steered the 55-foot boat back into the bay. Glancing at the coastline of the Narrows, Jack turned to Marie and asked, "So, what do you know about Port Valdez?" She smiled, realizing he was testing her research skills. The Exxon Valdez oil spill happened here. It caused extensive environmental damage, costing millions to clean up. It nearly destroyed the ecosystem, impacting animal, plant, and marine life. That's why we're conducting these spot checks today. Impressed, Jack nodded. Very good. While most of the spill has been cleaned up or absorbed, spot checks are crucial to ensure ongoing environmental health. Marie nodded, her cheeks bright red from the cold air. As she exhaled, a puff of misty breath escaped her lips. Jack glanced back at her and grinned. "We'll be back at the hotel soon. Just think about relaxing in a nice, hot spa." "Damn it, I can't wait, Jack," Marie rasped, consumed with thoughts of being with Jack Lee. She was well aware he was married, but in this moment, she didn't care. Over time, Marie and Jack had grown close as friends, and she couldn't ignore the ongoing issues between Jack and his wife. Observing his recent quiet demeanor, starkly different from his usual buoyant self over the past 3 weeks, Marie was taken aback when he mentioned heading to Alaska to inspect the local waters for oil seepage and toxicity levels. When he offered her the chance to join him in the field, she eagerly accepted, hoping it might finally crack his seemingly impenetrable exterior. She'd dropped hints before, to no avail, but tonight might just be the night. After securing the boat and storing the samples in the lab, they returned to the hotel. Marie and Jack stepped into the elevator, the doors closing as they ascended to their floor. "Jack?" "Yes, Marie?" "Am I pretty?" "What?" Jack was caught off guard by the question from this stunning woman. She wasn't just pretty, she was downright captivating. Yes, you're very pretty." "Are you sure?" He saw the longing in her big blue eyes. "Yes, Marie, you're very attractive, actually quite beautiful." She moved closer, her parka open to reveal a slender figure beneath the layers. "Do you find me attractive?" Jack knew where this conversation was heading. Internally, he smiled. If circumstances were different, if he weren't married and committed to Emma, he might have pursued this incredible woman who now stood before him. But he was married, still deeply in love with Emma. "Marie, I find you extremely attractive, but I'm a married man, and I love my wife, Emma. I know things haven't been good between you two for a while, Jack. I want you to know I'm here for you anytime, anywhere, in any way you want. I really like you and find you very, very attractive. I'm not asking for commitment, just for you to know. I'm here." With that, she stepped closer, stood on her toes, and softly kissed him on the lips. The elevator came to a halt, and the door slid open. Leaning against the door, preventing it from closing, she held his gaze. Marie reached out, gently tracing her fingers along his cheek, brushing against the stubble of his 2-day beard. After a few moments, she said softly, "You know my room number." Stepping away, she allowed the elevator doors to close, her sultry blue eyes fixed on him until the doors shut. "Oh my God," he breathed as the elevator continued to the next floor. Jack knew Marie liked him, but he hadn't realized to what extent. "I'm in trouble," he thought to himself, knowing he had 3 more days with her. He couldn't shake the image of her figure, particularly those well-defined curves under her red cotton pullover when she opened her parka. Entering his room, he shrugged off his parka and pulled a woolen knit shirt over his head. "Damn it, I should have been more cautious," he muttered. In the bathroom, he turned on the hot water. I should be taking a cold shower, he muttered again, feeling his body react strongly. After stripping down and stepping into the shower, he began with shampoo, then lathered soap over his body. As his hands moved, he felt his arousal. Damn, he muttered, continuing to touch himself, reveling in the sensation. Suddenly, he felt arms wrap around him, another pair of hands taking hold of him. He could feel her breasts against his back. How did she get in here? He wondered, startled. Marie, I can't do this. I'm married. He started, then turned to face her. Marie? No, I don't think so. You're mine, she declared firmly. Emma, how? I thought you were in Vancouver with Preston. Jack stared at her nude form, water running over her stunning figure. Her eyes glinted with desire. Still holding him, she pressed against him. Some things are more important than business trips, than promotions, she admitted. You were right about David Preston. We'll talk about that later. I'm sorry, Jack. Can you forgive me? Since you seem to have things under control, yes, I forgive you. If you can forgive me, Jack replied, bewildered. She moaned, rubbing against him. Forgive you for what, darling? For not prioritizing us. Emma, you're the most important thing in my life, not work. If I haven't shown that enough, forgive me, Jack confessed. She looked into his eyes, seeing love and concern. Smiling, she knelt before him, her skin brushing against his, and took hold of him. She looked up at him one last time before taking him into her mouth. Oh my God, he gasped as she pleasured him, her movements becoming rhythmic, her grip firm. Soon, he felt the familiar surge as he approached climax. Emma. I'm. Certainly. Here's a rewritten version while maintaining the essence, she continued without pause, unwilling to let go. Eventually, he couldn't hold back any longer and cried out as he released into her mouth. She withdrew until only the tip of his penis remained between her lips, allowing him to finish onto her tongue. Once his pulsing subsided, she leisurely let his manhood slip from her mouth, the shower water rinsing away any remnants. Looking up at him, she smiled and swallowed. Emma. Shoo. I wanted this, my husband. I wanted you to know I belong to you and no one else. He pulled her up, holding her close, pressing his lips against hers, their tongues intertwining. Jack tasted himself but didn't care, all he knew was his love for her. After drying off and continuing their rekindled passion on the bed, a faint knock came at the door. Jack knew who it was, and so did his wife. Unsure of how she would react, he glanced at her as she straddled him, his erection firmly inside her. She smiled and whispered, "Keep this ready for me, I'll only be a moment." She took his hand and placed it around his member. Grabbing her robe, she went to the door and peeked through the peephole. Marie had showered and dressed provocatively, braless, in a tight red sleeveless top and a very short white skirt. It was bold of her to come to his room, but she had planned for this moment. She smiled as the door cracked open, only to widen her eyes in shock as a beautiful redhead appeared. Marie, it's lovely to see you again after so long. I'm sorry, but Jack is occupied at the moment and will remain unavailable. Understand? Marie nodded silently, staring at the stunning redhead with piercing green eyes, then Emma closed the door with a smile. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, realizing how close she had come to losing the man she loved. After reading his note earlier, she knew what she needed to do. Earlier, she had called David Abrams, Jack's boss, and swiftly arranged her trip to Valdez, Alaska. But before boarding the plane, she also called Douglas Emmett Preston to inquire about the executive position David had offered her. Mr. Preston had no knowledge of such a position. When she explained what David had told her, he apologized sincerely. He acknowledged her value to the firm but understood when she decided to resign. Mr. Preston promised a glowing recommendation as she left Preston and Sons. Emma turned and returned to the bed, finding her husband still as she had left him, his hand on his member. He watched as she approached, a lopsided grin on his face as she let her robe slip off her shoulders and onto the floor. Climbing onto the bed, she took his hand away, replacing it with her own. Looking into his eyes, she whispered, "I love you, my husband." With love in his eyes, he softly replied, "I love you too, wife." Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.